والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. اللهم افتح علينا بنور العلم واحفظنا من ظلمات الوهم والجهل وحسن أخلاقنا بالهلم وانشر علينا من خزائن رحمتك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. وبعد. Now, chapter 22, on enjoying good and forbidding evil.
Enjoying good and forbid evil, for this is the pivot around revolves.
No. So the Prophet ﷺ, that religion is what? Good counsel. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Kuntum khayra ummatin. That you are, not you were. Kana is for lil-madi, is for the past. Like in Kuntum khayra ummatin is for emphasis. That you are a nation. Ukhrijat lin-nas. All of it is in the past. Ukhrijat, that you have been sent or you have been taken out. It's as if the Ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they bear the responsibility of guiding mankind. Sahih. If you look at the world today, responsibility is ours. No philosophy, whether it's secularism, neoliberalism, whether it's materialism, whether it's socialism, all of it has failed. Only one ideology remains, and the truth, which is Islam. And if you look at everything that we see in the dunya right now, all of it points towards what? Islam being true, al-haq, al-haqiqa, all of it's true, that what? La ilaha illallah. There is no deity except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-malik, al-haq, that He is the king, al-haq, wa al-mubin, the manifest, the evident. It's staring you in the face. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends trials and tribulations to what? Wake you up from your slumber. For the Muslims, it's a reminder, move back into the path. But for non-Muslims, it's hidayah, it's guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He wants good for them, He shakes them. In a physical sense, obviously, but He moves something within. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows you to find a way back to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the responsibility is not lifted from our shoulders. The responsibility of what? Telling other people about Islam. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat lin-nas. Why are you the best of nations being sent to mankind? Because you what? You command the good and you forbid the evil. That there is what? Harakah. There's some type of what? A movement towards doing something. Whether that's the written word, or whether that's teaching, whether that's, you have to do something. A Muslim, la ta'mur bil ma'ruf, that he doesn't command to good, nor does he forbid to evil. And it's as if he's what? He's betrayed the oath that's been given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's not done the job of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That when the Prophet ﷺ's main duty over his clothing, over his eating, over his food, over everything was the Quran, the Risala sent to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from the duties that are necessary upon the Prophets is at-tabligh, is to what? Relay and deliver the message. No Prophet is allowed to say, I don't want to relay the message. From the duties of prophethood is to convey tabligh. And that's why if you look at all of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they have a portion of this. They have a portion of commanding to good and forbidding the evil. And there's many ways. You can't command to good and forbid the evil if you don't know the good and the evil. So you can't command to good and you can't forbid the evil if you don't know. Like someone said today on Facebook, someone was saying, they went to the Imam and he said the elder came up to him and said, so the guy was complaining, saying, all the elders need to calm down with the youth, and you're making it difficult for them and stuff. So you can't command the good and forbid the evil unless you're someone of hikmah, of wisdom, that you're hakim, that you're wise, that you're someone of knowledge. That's why all of it revolves and moves back to what? Being a man of ilm and knowledge. Because without it, you can't traverse the path. Unless someone comes up to you and says, I don't pray, so khalas, you're going to hell. It's like the man who killed 99 people and then he went to the Abid. That's why I said that one faqih is greater than 1,000 worshippers. You know, who are fahim, he's the one who understands the deen. And the others here, it doesn't mean worshippers, it means someone who's a worshipper, like in laysa li faqih. He's not someone who's of great understanding or wisdom. It's not to belittle worship. So it's someone who doesn't understand the religion, he gave him the wrong fatwa, gave him the wrong ruling. Allah, he killed him as well. So the person that counsels other people to good and forbid evil must be someone who understands the religion. And if you're not someone, then you usher them towards those people who can counsel them. But there's always something you can do. So from the foundations of the religion is that you have to understand you have a responsibility. You can't say, I'm not an imam, I'm not a maulana, I'm not an ustad, I don't know anything. See, people say 3-4 years, whether it's part-time, on the weekends, doing certain courses, and you ask them, class, teach something now to young kids. I don't know anything. So what have you been doing for the last 3 years then? Are you wasting your time? You have to give back. Whatever little you know, you have to give back to your community and the people around you. You have to. Ilm is a amana. Knowledge is a trust. Likewise, your religion is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no guarantee that you will die upon the faith that you've been given. And from the responsibility of your faith is to deliver it to those who are not as fortunate to have this hidayah in their life. If you look in all the streets in Manchester, honestly, all you would want is all of these people to enter into Islam. You should have that gham, that concern and that that worry that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask us about these people. We sat with them, we talked to them, we worked with them, we spoke to them, and you know what? We didn't manage to guide them. Not did we not manage to guide them, we didn't even tell them about Islam. That's not Muslim. Then it comes to what? Muslims. Muslims likewise need good counsel. They need people who are upright, and they need people who take the responsibility seriously to be able to give good counsel. He says, you must enjoin good and forbid evil, for this is the pivot around which religion revolves, and it's the reason why God revealed His books. It's the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed His books. Why? Because if someone warns you, say your mom tells you, don't do that, and you do it, what's she going to say? I told you so. Tamam? Or I'll punish you for X, Y, and Z. If you do X, Y, and Z. You've been warned. Hakada. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through His book, by the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Prophets, He's conveyed His message. Hal balagh, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to his companions, have I conveyed? They said, yes, you've conveyed. Why? Because on the day of judgment, you will have no excuse in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Say that you didn't know. Like, you knew, you were warned. People reminded you, and you never acted. Those who the message hasn't been conveyed to them, or they were ignorant, there's discourse here now. Is it an excuse? Is it not an excuse? This is a theological debate. The Maturidiyya say it's not an excuse to not believe. We're talking about belief here, not in the realm of Islam. That's not what an excuse. The Ash'ari say it is an excuse. That if religion hasn't come to them, then they'll be excused in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Maturidiyya say, la, it's not an excuse. Why? Because man by his very nature, with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted him from his intellect, has the capacity to what? Uncover the ruling or uncover the sort of understanding that there's a creator. So that goes into the realm of what belief and non-belief. Like for Muslims likewise, you came to a lesson, you sat with the mashayikh, you heard, you listened, you understand now that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you responded and you never acted. You knew there's no ignorance died in you. That's why the prophets and the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're quick to remind people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's your duty likewise. No.
It is considered a duty by the consensus of all Muslims, and a great many passages in the book and Sunnah enjoin it and warn about its neglect. God the Exalted has said, "Let there be from amongst you a nation who invite to goodness, enjoin beneficent acts, and forbid reprehensible ones. Such are they who are successful." In many contexts has God attributed enjoining good and forbidding evil to the believers, on some occasions even before attributing faith to them, and on others before mentioning the regular performance of prayers and the giving of zakat. He has said, exalted is he, "Those of the children of Israel who disbelieved were cursed by the tongue of David and Jesus son of Mary, because they rebelled and used to transgress. They restrained not one another from the wickedness they did. Indeed, evil was what they used to do. And guard yourselves against a chastisement which cannot fall exclusively on those of you who do wrong."
Now, I think they feared men over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, someone does something wrong and you can't say it because you fear the repercussion of that person. Banu Israel, likewise, there was one of the rabbis of Banu Israel, he saw his son doing something with a woman, and he just said, "Mahlan, mahlan," slowly, slowly, as in carry on doing it. But I think they got to that point where they weren't concerned about rulings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was just, do not bother, do what you want type thing. And Islam, unfortunately, with the general population, that's where it's going, unfortunately. People get up to no good, nobody says anything. Alas, it's all good. And that's not a good sign. It's not a good sign when there's no fear for the dictates and the Sharia and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. That's not a good sign. Like when you come to a class and you're dressed a certain way, that's not appropriate, you can't see anything. This is secularism, is that there's a fasl, there's a divide between private life and the outward life. Is that keep religion in your own private life at home. But outside, don't tell anybody how to behave. Don't tell them to dress a certain way. Don't tell them to speak a certain way. Islam totally rejects that. Such that there's a whole class of what we call, in fiqh books, you have like these group of people, I forgot the name, what they call them now, is that their whole job is like, the guys, the police that you get in Saudi Arabia, and they're telling people like, the religious police. That's a thing in fiqh. There is a such thing as religious police, where they go around and they go to the souk, the markets, and they monitor like the trade and the people and the enjoyment of it. And that is a thing. I forgot the name, what you call it in Arabic now. But that exists. That exists. Such that Ali radiallahu anhu would at Fajr time knock on people's doors and wake them up for Fajr. And Khalifatul Muslimin, Amirul Mu'mineen, but he still had a concern for Muslims. He still wanted good for them, because enjoining good and forbidding evil comes from love, not hatred. It comes from love, because what you want the good that you have, or you fear that they're going to end up being hurt by going to the fire of hell, or the end is not going to be good. So that love is what makes you actually tell them that, brother, this isn't good, or that isn't good, or come to this way or that way. We have to have the concern. So it starts off with having a love for your brothers, building a community based on what? Goodness, building a community that's based on mawadda, hope and love. If you come to a class and you don't know the guy's next to you, you haven't spoken to him, this is totally incorrect. There were old people in Jordan, some of the Talamid or Shaykh Muhammad Sa'id al-Kurdi, and I'm telling you, so much love between them, such that you also feel like you're being loved. Like, there's just loads of handshaking and hugs, and people know your name, and they just remember you, and they're always asking about you, and whenever you see them after 5 years, they'll still know you. Hakadha Islam. This is what Islam is like. You can't meet a brother and then just forget about him and then pretend like you walked out in the town and then pretend like you never saw him, like in class. Like, anyone who comes in your midst, you have a type of concern for that person. You should take his number, you should speak to him, you should listen to him, you should ask his name, you should have love for that person. You know, to a point, obviously you can't make a massive family and bring them out to your house, but do that. Nowadays people don't invite you to your house, Sahih. Before, your parents, even though they had less, invited more people to their houses than the modern people. Now it's like you have to advance, tell them 2 weeks in advance that I'm going 5 o'clock on Sunday, is that alright? And they're like, let me get back to you. I mean, before they knock on the door, you're in, food's on the table, you eat. So, this is how it should be. Your brothers have a right over you. Your sisters have a right over you. If they're struggling with monetary-wise, financial-wise, they shouldn't feel shy. They should be able to go up to them and say, listen, I need some money. This is brotherhood, this is ukhuwa. All of this is absent. Literally absent. I'm telling you because I've tasted it myself. All of it is absent. It's me, myself, and I. It's how can I be good in my family and forget about everybody else. There's no barakah in that. There's no barakah whatsoever in that. The Prophet ﷺ himself sent envoys for commanding good and forbidding evil. Said, I am the messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah is one, believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if they did not believe, then they were ordered to give the jizya. If they failed to give the jizya, then they engaged in jihad. And jihad was what? It's nothing to do with defense and offensive and battling. No. Jihad is to give victory to the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to destroy vice from people and community. Jihad is there to protect people. For example, there is profligacy or facade, evil in a community. The only way to remove it, if they don't accept it, is by force. Only way. Only way. Do you know when someone's obstinate and I need to, what we call that, imagine you have a child that's really obstinate and he's not listening and nothing works, the teacher isn't teacher. The only thing that works is harshness at that point. Nothing else will work. You can speak to him all you want. Sometimes harshness doesn't work. Sometimes harshness doesn't work. You have to be, or it's not always, but we're talking about, like lands and armies and things. But at one point, only struggle works. And that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that at one point, one people has to struggle with the others, or that either virtue or vice will empower the other one. Right now, in the world, vice is like overpowering virtue at the moment. That's why we have an uphill struggle right now, because everything is geared towards vice and not virtue. So the jihad right now is to spread virtues, not the virtues, the virtue, spread virtue, good character in people. Dealing the right. You tell them they don't come. I'll come tonight, they don't come. No, I know. You might think it's simple. The problem is what you say. There's an amana there. Iman, belief is an amana. It's a trust, and your words are likewise amana. Why is it that when you say "talaqtuki," I've given you a divorce, it's just a word. It's just a word, but that one word has repercussions because Islam's teaching your words have an amana. If you can't do it, don't say it. If you can't do it, then say, okay, I can't do it. But everything you say, there must be some type of amana, trust behind what you say. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us all of those things. And they said, the messenger of God, may blessings and peace be upon him, said, any one of you who sees a reprehensible thing should change it with his hand. The first thing that is you do as much as you are capable of. If you're in a position of leadership, then you use that position to change what you can. So with your hand, meaning that you physically change something. You see something on the road, you see an obstacle, you see something, you change it with your hand. If he's unable to, then with his tongue, the least you can do after that is speak about it. So when it comes to Palestine, Gaza and all this, you say, oh, you can't do anything, you can't physically change anything. It's not. In one level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not giving you the responsibility to go and change it physically. All He wants you to see is that you are concerned with what's going on, that you are speaking about it, that at least you have the courage to speak about it is one thing. Tamam? Some people don't even have the courage to speak about it. Tamam? Then he says, if he's unable to, then with his tongue. If he's unable to, then with his heart. This is the double of the iman. That this is what the weakest degree of faith. That at least have some type of hatred in the heart for what you see. For example, you walk past a pub, you walk past evil, you see something. At least in your heart, I could change this, I wish I could sort this out. For the iman, however, it's also maqloob. This hadith is also on it's turned on it's the other way around. Meaning, if you don't have hatred in your heart, you'll never do something with the tongue, and you'll never have the capacity to do it physically. So it's adaful iman, but it's also awwalul iman. It's also the first of faith, because without the heart, there's no tongue and there's no limb, there's no physical action. So this hadith is also maqloob, it's also turned the other way around also. No.
And Messenger of God said, by the one in whose hand lies my soul, you will enjoin good and forbid evil, or God will soon send his punishment upon you, whereupon you will pray and not be answered. And the one who is not compassionate to our young and respectful to our elders, and who does not enjoin good and forbid evil, is not one of us.
No, you did take the responsibility. That's why I always say it's not the responsibility of just one teacher or one organization to do the work. It's every single person's responsibility, especially in the West, to propagate and preach Islam and to take the responsibility serious. To say, oh, you know what, I'm going to send my kids and they're going to go study medicine and dentistry, and they're not imams, or it's not their concern. It's totally wrong. If you're going to engage the hospital world, or you're going to engage the accounting or banking or finance, you still have to preach Islam in your capacity. And if you can't, then you need to question why you're there. As in, if you can't physically practice Islam and you're being stopped, then you have to question what's happening. Because this is much more important than all of that, in my opinion. It's much more important. Those communities that angels say, why this community has been destroyed? And they said, because what? They were people who were pious, they were salih, but they weren't what? They never rectified other people. So being pious is also not sufficient. You could be pious, but you never went out and you never rectified the community, you never spoke out against the injustices that happen in the community around us, the oppression that happens to women, for example, in our communities. Nobody speaks out. Why not? Because you're too scared of the uncle in the masjid, you're too scared about what change. For example, masajid, problems between masajid, it's a type of injustice, it's a type of zulm. You're too scared out to speak out. Because you don't want, you're scared that the problem's going to happen. Yeah, you might not be able to speak out. The people in certain leadership roles should be speaking out about these issues. It's not okay for injustice to be just left and nobody does anything. No leader, no community leader, no imam, no one in a leadership potential, that they just leave injustice as it is. But the Prophet said it's not from us. That anyone in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, other companions, that they would go, they would speak, they would tell about the injustices, they would tell them that, oh, my husband's done X, Y, and Z. And the Prophet ﷺ, the son who went, the father who complained to Umar ibn Khattab, and then the son came and complained and said, look, my father, he's married a woman that's not from a very good lineage, and she's X, Y, and Z. He hasn't even taught me anything, and therefore, why should I respect him? And Umar ibn Khattab then rebuked the father and said, you haven't given him a good name, you haven't picked a good mother for him, and you haven't taught him. As in, he's got every right to be disrespectful in a sort of quote unquote. No.
Know that enjoining good and forbidding evil is a collective obligation, Farud Kifaya, which is discharged by some, is not incumbent upon the rest, and the reward being proper to those who discharge it. If no one does it, everyone who is aware of it and able to act is held responsible.
No, Farud Kifaya is the opposite of what? Fard al-ain or fard ain, meaning it's not some people must upkeep this responsibility, even though it's still a responsibility at everyone at a certain level. But as a community level, some people must upkeep, and therefore you must make sure that this is happening in the community, otherwise we will all become sinful. Therefore, if you need certain aspects of the community to do this, then they now become people that we call like the Islamic Baytul Mal, or the money that of the Muslims should be then used to fund these projects, and it's their responsibility to fund these people now and to pay for the work that they're doing. For example, if you have organizations that are doing this work, it's not just like, oh, they're an organization. No, they are what? Uplifting a responsibility from you. That's why you're funding these organizations. That's why you're paying for these imams, because if they weren't there, you'd be sinful. So they are actually paying for your work to be done by them in many ways. That's why you have to support all the people who go to jihad and fight for the Muslim army. If you're not fighting, but they are uplifting your responsibility, that's why they have a right over your money. You have to upkeep for them. Likewise, Murabbun, for example, it's the government's duty to have imams, people who teach Muslims their faith, and they're paid by what? The money of the Muslim Baytul Mal, the money of the government. Likewise, it's the responsibility of the government to have what? People who are versed in Islamic spirituality, or called Murabbun, like Murshideen, guides. It's their responsibility to have them in the community. That's why we suffer in the West, because nobody looks after the affairs of the Muslims. Everyone does whatever they want. There's no concerted, united, these type of organizations. This is how the da'wah is going to be. This is how we're going to have murshideen, or people that are guiding the community. Everything's what? It's split, it's scattered, it's dispersed, and therefore it doesn't impact. The only way is that when you have a concerted, united effort, that there's impact in the work that you do. No.
Your duty when you see someone neglecting an act of goodness or committing an act of evil is to make him aware of the good or evil nature of the act, as the case may be. If he does not respond, you must counsel and put fear into him. If he is still not rebuked, then you must coerce him and even beat and compel him to stop the evil he is engaged in, and break the forbidden instruments of distraction, pour away the wine, and restore illicit money to its rightful owners.
There you go. So good for you to go around beating everyone else. Obviously, this is all with the caveat that you don't make things worse. It's all about saying someone who's in a position to do that. For example, your father and your son is doing that. It's your duty to do that. You're a judge, or your community. You have that role in the community, like police or something, and you have that role. You can do that. You can't just go around breaking in people's instruments and doing things like that. Like, there's a whole discourse that if you do break someone's instrument, are you liable to pay that person or not? The monetary worth. There's a whole discourse in fiqh. So you can't just go around doing that. And that's the problem with some of the sects, is that they take a lot of this stuff literally. It's not about taking it literally, it's about being wise. You want to get to the outcome. How you get there, it could be that speaking to them has a better effect than going around and breaking the house and chucking the PlayStation away. So it's all on wisdom.
This last degree is only for those who have either dedicated themselves wholly to God or are authorized delegates of the ruler. The first two degrees, which are the appraisal of things as good or evil and counseling, are only neglected by confused, ignorant people or scholars who are inadequate. Know that enjoining obligatory and forbidding prohibited things is in itself an obligation. Enjoining
is that we mentioned in the Muqaddimat al-Salah class, fard is a fard. You can't equate that with the mustahabbat, with the recommended. There's levels. Why the fuqaha categorize things in a certain way. Therefore, the emphasis of following the fara'id are much greater than the emphasis in following what? The mustahabbat. Therefore, for example, salah, so fasting, hajj, or certain fara'id of what? Akhlaq, virtue, sins of the heart. These are the fara'id or the muharramat, the unlawful. There's much greater emphasis on those things than other things that we may concentrate on in our communities. Tamam?
Whenever you enjoin good or forbid evil and are not listened to, you must leave the place where evil is being committed and those who commit it until they return to ordinance. Likewise, you must detest sins and those who persist in committing them and abhor them for the sake of God, this being a duty of all Muslims.
Now, detest sins and abhor them. The thing, the action, but not the person itself. Now, there's a distinction made here between the thing and the person. Because the person is a makhluk, creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created that person, and he has a sword, and he has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, all of it is from Allah's creation, and He feeds them, and He sustains them, and He nourishes them. You don't have the right to hate the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you hate the things that creation do, and you abhor those things, and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He guides that person, or those creation, or those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. No.
When you become angry because you were wronged or insulted, and this shows on your face, and you find that your loathing of that deed and the person who did it are more than your loathing of any evil that you see or hear about, then know for certain that your faith is weak, and your honor and wealth are dearer to you than your religion.
No, so that's the barge code, that's what we call litmus test here. It's that where our nufus, where our egos are at. Sahih? It says, look, when you become angry because you were wronged or insulted, someone says something bad to you, you might inside what? The fury, the blood pressure, the anger, straight away you become what? Red and angry. And the Prophet ﷺ was opposite to this. That you would only become angry when the dictates of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were not enjoined or they were left. And the companions, that it was as if they were selfless. When the Bedouins would say stuff to the Prophet ﷺ, he would let it happen. And when the dictates of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left, then he would become angry, such that his vein would protrude and you could see it in his face, because it was about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It wasn't about the self. It wasn't about the ego. That's why mujahada, struggling with the ego, comes before jihad. Because if you can't struggle with your own self, you will never be able to struggle with somebody else. Impossible. That's why those who fought, and then the Prophet ﷺ sees a woman and she says to her son, passed away, oh, you've gone to, mashallah, you've died as a martyr, you've gone to Jannah. And the Prophet ﷺ said, maybe he's done X, Y, and Z, maybe he's done X, Y, and Z. How do you know he's going to Jannah? And this is someone who fought in battle and he's died and he's a martyr, he's passed away fighting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu said, how do you know that he's going to go directly to Jannah? So, after the alim is the one who fought. That's going to be entered into hellfire first. He says you fought, so people would say you were what? Brave and courageous. That's why purification of the self is the basis of everything. Without it, ilm is not sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it becomes wabal, it becomes what? Like something bad for you rather than something good. Likewise, your ibadah, it becomes with ostentation, riyah, all of these things happen because you're not doing it sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why there has to be a real revival in how to become sincere in our worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in our engagement with the deen once again. So here it says, when you become angry because you were wronged or insulted, and it shows on your face and you find that you're loathing of that deed, and the person who did it are more than your loathing of any evil that you see or hear about, then know for certain that your faith is weak. Amen. And your honor and wealth are dearer to you than your religion. That's not a good state to be in. Imam al-Ghazali talks about weak faith is like having a body with no limbs. We mentioned this before, having a body with no limbs. What's going to happen to that body, says, if you put it outside on the street? Imagine you have no arms and no limbs. You're alive. That's like your iman. But just about, he could come and he could go. That's weak faith. You see, the problem with weak faith is that on your deathbed, if your faith is weak, it's more easier, not going to last when you die. That's why the ulama and the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are very concerned about iman and faith, because you need strong faith to last the pangs of death. Because at that moment, weak faith crumbles. When shaitan comes, when the wasawis come, when you're in the moment of what? Being, shaitan's trying to entice you towards. Muhammad is being enticed by shaitan and he's just about managing to get past it. Imagine our state when we're about to pass away. So that's why this moment here is about strengthening your faith and iman. That's the point of all of this that we're doing, is to strengthen your faith and iman in Allah. Strengthening your faith comes in multiple ways. One is to spend time with the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One is to attend ilm and knowledge. Because what strengthening can happen through the intellect and reason. Some people, this is more effective in that they naturally incline towards that way. For example, if you tell them about evidences and proofs, and you explain things to them, and the science in the Quran and the miracles, and all of that is valid and permissible. That's why we have miracles. So the Prophet ﷺ came with miracles because people thought, oh, this goes against the laws of nature, and they incline towards this way. Some people look at ijaz al-Quran, linguistic miracles in the Quran, and they incline towards that way. Everyone has a portion for strengthening their faith. Some people is what? It's inshad, it's qasa'id. Everyone has what we call a code. Everyone has a secret passcode. Only the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala know what your passcode is. What it is that makes you tick. What is your thing? That's why some people, what is wa'adh, it's admonition. They need to listen to what? Being reminded, speeches. Some people is ilm, engaging in what? Actual books and tahqiq. Some people is teaching. Some people is da'wah. Everyone has their way of becoming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why when arafa nafsah, arafa rabbah. That whoever knows himself will know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the whole thing is in you. You have to what? Uncover who you are. وَلِلْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا. You have the capacity to know your defects by the ayah of the Quran. No man is ignorant of his own self. You know deep down what your defects are, what your vices are, and who you are and where your attachments are. Every man who does tafakkur, reflection, and who ponders will see the reality of himself. No doubt whatsoever. But it's our sins, our attachments to dunya and other things that stop us from progressing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So mujahada is one of the prongs of tasawwuf. The second prong is zuhd, the abstention from the dunya. And the third prong is dhikr, is remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you were to summarize tasawwuf in 3 words, these are the 3 words that tasawwuf would be summarized in. Mujahada means struggling in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether that be what? Going against the nafs, spiritual exercises, fasting, giving money, things that you don't like doing. Mujahada, jahid, tushahid, kull al-fawaid. The statements of the awliya is strive assiduously, tushahid, kull al-fawaid. You will witness all beneficial things in your life. Imagine someone who works his socks off 20, 30 years in a career. He sees the fruits of his labor. These are the sunnatullah fil qawm. These are the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the universe. Those who strive hard, they'll see the fruits of their labor. Zuhud, abstaining from the dunya. Al-hubbu dunya ra'su kulli khati'ah. The love of the world is the apex of all evil deeds. Therefore what? أنا زاهد. I move away from the dunya as much as possible. لماذا? Why should I move away from the dunya? Because in the grave, there's no dunya in the grave. If you are attached to cigarettes, attached to your PlayStation, attached to your football team, in the grave, your heart will then also attach to those things in the world, in the grave, and you'll have none of it in the grave. And you won't be attaching to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the grave. So, in a way, the ulama say, remove it from your life before you remove from it. Because you don't want to enter the grave having these attachments with the dunya. Allah, so you want your qalbak lillah, for Allah, billah wa fillah, you want it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. That's why al-faqih, the one who is actually, because the fiqh we mentioned in the book of fiqh, that what fiqh is, what faqih is, like in the awliya, like your Imam al-Hasan al-Shazili and others, the al-faqih is the one who removes all attachments between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As in fahim al-dunya bihaqiqatiha, that he understands what the reality of the world, that he removes them one by one. Hadha wal faqih. This is what the real faqih, the real person of understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, when you become angry, now we'll talk about this, your feet and your honor and wealth are dearer to you than your religion. Now, you are permitted
to remain silent if you know with certainty that if you enjoin good or forbid evil, your words will neither be listened to nor accepted, or there will ensue obvious harm either to yourself or your property.
This is about weighing things up. You can't always use this as an excuse, but when you're in a realm of what, as we said, responsibility, or there's people that are obedient to you, then at that point you have to speak. If you know this guy's not obedient to me, this guy's got a hot head, if I say something you might punch me, then it's better to stay silent at that point. Or to use other ways of getting through to the person. The man speaking nicely might be, whatever the way, but you have to work it out yourself. No.
This is when enjoining and forbidding change from being an obligation into being a tremendous virtue, which indicates that the one who does them loves God and prefers Him to all else. And if you come to know that an evil will increase if forbidden, or that the harm will involve other Muslims in addition to yourself, then silence is better and in some cases obligatory.
Now, again, this needs a type of wisdom. The man needs a type of wisdom. And this only comes with spending time with the wise and spending time in the majalis of ilm and knowledge. You can't, wisdom isn't something that you can make up like that. So you have data, you have information, you have knowledge, and then you have wisdom. Data and information is what Western academia, we go to school, college, university, data and information. Islam isn't concerned with data and information. That's why he said ilmu nur, that knowledge is a light. Allah places in the heart. That's why Waqi, when he complained, when Imam Shafi complained to his teacher Waqi, he said, "What I'm struggling to memorize." Tamam? And he said, Al-ilmu nur, that la yu'ta li'asi, that it's not given to a disobedient servant. So this was our understanding, or we call epistemology of knowledge in our understanding. Tamam? So data and information is one thing. For example, someone memorizes all of the hadith in Bukhari and all of the Quran and everything. No, he's got information, but he's still not at the level of knowledge. Because knowledge is a memorization. Memorization is an aid for knowledge. So you memorize to get ilm. But ilm is fahm. Ilm is fahm. But fahm, or one step higher, is what? Al-hikmah, wisdom. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't give hikmah to everybody. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Whoever's been given hikmah has been given all goodness. So there are ulama and there are ulama. That's why the darajat, or called tabaqat in the ulama. Not everyone, not every alim, not every imam, not every speaker is hakim and wise. Someone can ask a question, two people can answer in different ways. One causes more harm than good. And we've seen that recently. Ask about Gaza. Oh, Fulan's like X, Y, and Z, and he's dangerous. You're causing like a worse outcome in this manner. Because now what have you done? you made Muslims doubt the piety of another Muslim who's doing good, who's teaching, who's preaching, who has books, who has institutions, and instead of encouraging people to listen to that person, you're sowing doubt, don't listen to him. Imagine that's what happens nowadays. Everyone sows doubt in the other. Whereas in our epistemology, when someone went to Zaylai and said, shall I study fiqh with someone? He said, La tuqassir ad-durus alayya. He said, don't just study with me. As if from his humbleness and humility, go and also benefit from other people. So they're not going to want to sow doubt in somebody else. Unless he's a close student and there really is a problem. In general, if someone is thicker, confident, he knows his stuff, they're going to encourage the advanced students to benefit. You're making what beneficial, like positive changes. When you go on YouTube and you say, he's like this and Fulan's like this, and you make a rebuttal video and you call people names, you're making, even though you're thinking you're commanding the good and forbidding the evil, you're actually, the outcome is worse. The outcome is much, much worse because you just saw discord in the Muslim community. You saw massive amounts of discord. Same thing in the Asian community. Yeah, Maulana so-and-so said something and it's wrong. Khalas. But you know what? If you hadn't made that video, 95% of people probably wouldn't even know that he said that thing. You have magnified the whole problem because you decided to make it about yourself and your ego, and you do it with the what? The justification that I'm commanding good and forbidding the evil. And then we all watch and say, oh, wow, he's such a good scholar, he's a lion of Islam, and hero of the day and stuff like that. Oh, let's be Hakim. He's not someone who's wise. Silence can say more words sometimes than speaking. Because there's a time and there's a place and there's a way, and you have to look at the outcome. The outcome is that you want benefit for the Muslims. So-and-so is speaking about Palestine, let him speak, even though he's what? It's not the point to say something at this moment in time. This moment in time was for unity. You caused disunity. You moved the conversation away from what? Palestine. And Noam Chomsky also speaks about this. He says that people in universities who make sort of, we're going to ban Israeli products and this and whatever, and they're trying to do all these next level projects. He says the same thing. He says, you've got to think about the outcome. He goes, sometimes a lot of these initiatives cause the conversation to be moved away from Israel, and everyone starts debating this thing that they're doing, the initiative, and look at it, they're doing this, and it's causing this, and it moves the conversation away from the real problem. So he talks about how, that shouldn't happen and stuff like that. So it's a universal problem, but again, it goes back to hikmah. That the people that are leading our communities, they need to be much more wiser in the way they're doing things.
Beware of dissimulation, for it is crime. This is to remain silent for fear of losing a position, money, or any other benefit, the source of which is the person committing the reprehensible act or any other depraved person.
And that's again a massive problem, is that if you're going to be in a position of leadership, you're going to have been of a certain status and caliber to have taken that leadership position. That's why Umar ibn Khattab would say, Ta'allam wal ilm, seek knowledge before, qabl, you become what? Leaders of people. Because at that point, it's too late to now learn. And if you're not someone who's like mastered himself, when it becomes difficult to speak, you won't be able to speak. When it becomes difficult to give, you won't be able to give. When it becomes difficult to sacrifice your mansab, your position, you won't be able to do. So you're going to end up causing more harm than good. And that's the majority of politicians that are involved in politics nowadays. If you look at the Muslim world, most of them are like fraudsters. Most of the money, like in Georgia, for example, big projects eaten by politicians. Nothing happens. They just pocket the money and get off, and they stay in Pakistan and other places and stuff like that. Because they're not people who are ready for leadership positions.
Know that when you enjoin or forbid something, that this should be done sincerely for God, gently, wisely, and with compassion. For these attributes do not combine in one person who acts and refrains in accordance with his injunctions, but that his words become effective and evoke reverence, a powerful response from the heart, and a sweetness in the ears. Seldom shall his words be rejected.
Ad-Dinu Yusr, that religion is ease, and it should be done with rifq, or with like a type of easiness, with enjoying good and forbid. It's not about being harsh and evil and angry and shouting and screaming. It's about being, as I said before, it's about having love for the brother, having some type of attachment and actually wanting good for that person. And there's numerous occasions in the seerah and the hadith where we notice the way the Prophet ﷺ enjoined good and forbid the evil. When they asked about, he said, would you zina? And how did he say? He said, oh, how dare you come to me X, Y, and Z. He said, what if somebody did this with your sister? Method of giving da'wah. The one who did zina and came to the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ didn't say anything, he just turned away. He said it was second time, third time, Ma'iz turned away, didn't say anything. As in, this was the Prophet ﷺ, he had concern and deep love for the people around him. He wasn't like, yeah, that's it, I'm going on the minbar tonight, I'm going to tell everyone what you did. Do you know what I mean? And nobody should go to his lessons anymore, everybody should stay away from him, and boycott this guy, and that's it, he's been... The Prophet ﷺ never said that. Because you're human. Everyone's human, everyone made mistakes. Why if someone was going to come and uncover all the things that you've done? Just because people don't know about it. For you as a person, it's not about making it public. If you find a sin in your brother, or you find something done wrong, the first thing is to conceal his issue and problem. Not to tell other people about it, not to make it public. It's a sin. You can't go around telling people, oh yeah, do you know what, this guy, yeah, he did this the other day, and you know what, and yeah, don't go to his lesson. First thing is to conceal his issue, and then to speak to him privately and give him private guidance, and to help him through what he's done.
Anyone who has true vigilance for God, reliance upon him, and has acquired the attribute of mercy towards his servants, cannot prevent himself from removing every evil that he sees, except when prevented from doing so by means which he cannot overcome. Beware of spying, which is seeking to know the private affairs of other Muslims and their hidden sins. The Prophet has said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the one who seeks out the secrets of his brother Muslim will have God seeking out his secrets until he exposes him, even should he be in the depths of his house.
No, from the ahadith, like the 3-4 ahadith that the deen revolves around, is from the good of the Muslim is to leave that which does not concern you. That's what concerns it, like, I think that's that 3-4 ahadith that concern that pivotal religion. One of them is this, because fudul, in general, it's fudul. To leave anything that doesn't concern you. To leave anything that doesn't concern you. Don't worry about the guy next door and what he's getting up to, or what so-and-so's doing on Facebook, and what holiday he's gone on, and how much he's spending. It's none of your concern. Don't busy yourself with that. There's no benefit in it. He says here, beware of spying. Because what happens is when you're concerned with others, it leads to sin in general. You start what? You start becoming envious of people, because now you know what they're doing. It leads to spying, which is sin. You want to know what they're doing. You try and find their faults. It leads to backbiting, because now you're envious. You want to speak bad about them. So the Qur'an said, fudul. Leave anything that is what? None of your concern. Whether that's looking, whether that's speech, whether it's engaging in projects, none of your concern. So-and-so is doing X, Y, and Z, then get on with it. If you're concerned, if it doesn't concern you, then forget about it. That's why when people get really worked about football and this and that, whatever, it's none of your concern. How is it concern you as in like if someone's won or lost? Sorry to be any football fans, it's your concern. As in, tell me one benefit that it gives you in your life. Tell me. Anyone who watches, tell me one thing that it benefits you in your life. Do they give you money? Instead, you give them money. They don't do anything for you. Nothing at all. Instead, they eat your money. They have hundreds of thousands of pounds. No benefit whatsoever. But we just go over and over and over again, like, literally like sheep. You've got to get past those things. You've got to become stronger and better. These things, they don't move you anymore. these things that move the general population. A Muslim should be bigger and better than that. You can't be like the normal people. If you want to be great, you have to be different. You have to have some type of a mayyiza. You have to be like stand out. You have to have some like backbone that you can rely. Because you rely on Allah, and you're from the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. You can't be like everybody else. You can't join the crowd. In the beginning, the Prophet ﷺ was on his own. There were 3, 4, 5, 6 companions only. Look how Badr and how they were tortured, but they had a backbone. They were people of believers. They weren't worried about anything. They were strong. Look how Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, he had iman that was very strong because he was surrounded by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. How can that? I was like, oh, I can't do class tonight. I can't go mosque tonight. Can't do this tonight because football's on. Fellow football. Some people even been buried, I've heard, with footballs and Man United t-shirts. Even in the graveyard, they've got like, tombstones with Manchester United on there and stuff like that. How could that? Is this religion now? You cannot say, you know what, it's all good, it's all a bit of fun, it's all a bit of entertainment. I don't agree with any of that. My personal opinion is I don't agree with any of that. Why? Because it has an attachment in your heart. And the heart is only for Allah. Anything that has an attachment, that has no connection to Allah, it has no room in your heart. Full stop. Your work, it has an attachment to the deen. Why? Because it's part of rizq and bringing money. Your parents, your family, your relationships, it has an attachment to your deen because you've been asked to look after them. Your house, you're giving shelter to your family, khalas, their repairs, anything, it's to do with the deen. Brothers, khalas, ukhuwa. But football, that's what I'm saying. If there's a benefit, tell me. If there's a benefit and you can attach it to the deen, then khalas. If you can't, then there's no room for it. Well, that's why when it says shatranj, chess, the fuqaha discuss, is it permissible, is it not permissible? Some said it's not permissible, some said it's makruh. Why? Because it's from lahu. Lahu is the asal of lahu, the word lahu, al-la'ib, play and amusement, is al-ghubar al-khafif fil-hawa. You know that in the sun, where you see the small dust in the sun, and sunlight comes in, that's the asal, the basis of the word la'ib. Meaning, it's nothing, it has no worth whatsoever. You go around catching the dust in the sky. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls it la'ib. It has no worth whatsoever. When you see Muslims who are adult, who have a brain, who have jobs, careers, intelligent, and they attach to those things, he has no brain. That's why I say data and information does not make you an alim or a scholar or knowledgeable. Because you pass an exam, that's all you've done, but you're still what? You're not a person of knowledge. Because knowledge mentioned in the Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ilm, is a hal, is a state. It's not, it's a way of being. It's not like just something that you just acquired by you've learned it. For example, I memorized this book, I'm becoming an alim. That's not what it means here. Tamam? Anyway, now we're going to finish this book and straight. Anyone who has true vigilance for God, reliance upon Him, and is acquired the attribute of mercy towards His servants. No, deen rifq. That's why Shaykh Rifa'i al-Saghir, he says, tariqatuna, our way is to be what? Have mercy with children. The first or second line in his book, tariqatuna, in Tasawwuf, he has a poetry, he says, tariqatuna is to be merciful with children. Part of that, he said in Tasawwuf, he said, our way is to have mercy. Ar-Rahimuna man yarhamumur Rahman tabarak wa ta'ala. He says, those who show mercy to people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful to them. That be merciful to those on earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be merciful to you. Mercy. Beware of spying and that. Know that a concealed sin harms only its doer, but when it becomes public and is not stopped, it harms become general. No. When sins and reprehensible things become obscenely in evidence where you live and you despair of truth being accepted, then isolate yourself. Now you get into realm of what's better now. Is khalwa better? Meaning is abstention and being away and isolating yourself better? Or is mingling with people better? here, this depends on each single person. You can't say as a whole that it's better or it's not better. Because the ummah, the people who their hearts are firm and their iman is strong, they're permissible to intermingle and go to places where there's profligacy or there's evil. But those who are weak, then the Shaykh would normally reprimand them or stop them from intermingling with people that are evil or fusaq or evildoers. Why? Because they don't have the capability to defend themselves or protect themselves from those things. So in the beginning, if you're a salik, if you're a murid, if you're someone who's a spiritual wayfarer, the Shaykh might say, don't go there. Don't go to this gathering, don't go here, just stay here, do this, do that, stay in this environment. Until you become qawi, you become strong. Then he may let you go anywhere. Because now he has thicker that it doesn't matter what you encounter, you're going to be safe on their way. Right? So it's not like everyone needs to go to the mountains, everyone doesn't need to go to the mountains, it's not a one for all treatment. No, but in this lies safety. However, there are hadith from the Prophet ﷺ where every opinion giver becomes has fascinated with his own sin, where wine is drunk openly and musical instruments become widespread. Then the Prophet ﷺ says, it's better to concern yourself with yourself, as in go and just concern yourself, forget about everything. As at this point, it's gone too far. You won't be able to make a change. Tamam? Or emigrate to another place. That wasn't the earth vast enough for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, wasn't this earth made vast? That if people complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their judgment, I couldn't leave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did we not make the earth vast? Could you not emigrate somewhere else where it was more feasible for religion, where it was easier for you? No. Which action is better? For when chastisement falls in a place, it includes both the wicked and the good, as it doesn't differentiate between good and evil. To the believer who was neglectful in supporting God's religion, it is an expiation and the mercy, but for others, it is a chastisement and affliction. He was pious, why is he getting punished? So he says for him, expiation and the mercy, but for others, the person that was pious, he'll get a recompense for it in the other life. Person that was pious. The Muslim that neglects his duties, death is a kafara for him. It's an expiation for his sins. But for others, it is a chastisement and an affliction. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does indeed know best. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He allows us to tread the path of the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives us himmah to command the good and forbid the evil. That makes us people of ilm. That makes us people of ilm and nafi, knowledgeable. It makes us people who seek beneficial knowledge. That we seek the majalis and the gatherings of knowledge. And we have himmah, high resolve for the deen and for Islam and for the mission of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in doing that, you become from the great elite people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because a small amount in these days is a lot. And there are hadith that give that meaning. That doing a little, you could be in the ranks of the companions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in reward. Not in rank, in reward, by just doing a little in this age. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us good for Him, that He gives us fiqh, deen, and that He accepts the little work that we do. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina Muhammad